Welcome into Thursday's 2-minute drill. I'm here with Sam Monson and Seth Galina. ESPN recently came out with their top 10 cornerback list. Sam, what is your biggest problem with this list?
Not having Richard Sherman as a top 10 cornerback in today's NFL is absurd. It's not just like a difference of opinion, a slight problem. It's nuts. He gave up 227 receiving yards all last season, even if you say he was bad in the Super Bowl. And look, he wasn't great. Sammy Watkins lost him. He gave up 70-something yards in the Super Bowl alone. But add in all the postseason, he only gave up 300 and something yards. That's still like 250 less than guys like Stephon Gilmore gave up in the regular season. Sherman is a top 10 cornerback, and not having him there is just unacceptable.
Yeah, I think we still have this issue with the man versus zone corner dilemma. And I think we underrate corners because we feel like they're zone corners when there's a lot of very difficult techniques in zone coverage, especially for a cover 3 corner. And Sherman plays them as well as anyone maybe in history. And he came back this year, bounced back this year to have a great year. I think he was our top rated cornerback in coverage. So yeah, he is the biggest snub for sure on this list.
Yeah, for me, I think Darius Slay is too high at 4. I think it's again one of those where we overvalue players who are in man coverage so much. Slay has had a difficult year or so, with the Lions. Hopefully, when he goes to the Eagles, he's a little bit better in 2020.
I think he's a great example of a guy that just caught the bad rub of the green a few times. He was in tight coverage for a lot of those beats, and I could easily see him bouncing back. Let's pivot to Derrick Henry. The running back gets paid and used at 10. Are the Titans going to regret this deal?
Look, they will, unfortunately, because what team doesn't regret paying a running back a lot of money? I'm happy for the guy who puts his body on the line. Since his, I think, junior year or sophomore year at Alabama, including those years, including the preseason, which are still snaps, he has over 300 forced missed tackles. So that is just a lot of wear and tear on the body. So I'm happy that he got paid because, again, he puts his body on the line. It'll be tough for him to just, be the same player year in and year out with the fluctuations that teams have on offense. Surrounding the run game. So I'm not sure it's worth it for the Titans, but I'm happy for the player.
Yeah, same here. I mean, he was great last season. He would have been a top 5 rusher if we just looked at his yards after contact, But at the same time, when you look at that team, they really only emerged offensively when Ryan Tannehill became, the starting quarterback for them. Situational stuff really does influence how things play out for back. Now, the Titans do have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL this season. However, it's just going to be tough because, what they'll find out is that, it's not necessarily the specific runner that does all these things, but the scheme and, the efficiency that's afforded by the Tannehill-Arthur Smith combination.
Yeah, look, all the data says yes, and all the recent sort of case history says yes. I mean, what was the last running back that got a big money contract that actually ended up justifying it by the end? You've got to go back a fair amount of time or constrict yourself just to Christian McCaffrey, who hasn't had time to not live up to the deal yet. I think there's a chance, though, that the Titans might not regret it. They didn't pay him market resetting money. He's still only like the 5th best paid running back in the NFL, and I could see him backing up last year's season with another really good season. Maybe not quite as dominant as he was last season, but still, threatening the league leader, still amongst the best running backs in the NFL. I think at that point, the Titans will probably feel it was a fair deal.
Yeah. So speaking of contracts, the Chiefs just gave out 2 huge contracts to their quarterback, to an interior defensive lineman. What do we see in terms of a change in their kind of long-term outlook now that they've kind of solidified a lot of cap space in 2 players?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, they're so top-heavy. They have a bunch of stars and a bunch of, just a guys, right? And that's tough to win with when we know that the research, especially on the defensive side, says that you really want to be more spread out. Now, their quarterback is probably a singular figure in the NFL. And while they only have 2 wide receivers under contract after this season that are these sort of veteran-ish guys, they're McCole Hardman and Tyreek Hill, who are both very good. The Mahomes contract gave him a ton of flexibility early, and then it gave him a lot less uncertainty late, knowing that they have to pay him that much. The Jones deal, a little bit perplexing, but still not as bad as necessarily we thought it was going to be early on. So there's a lot of pressure on Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes moving forward. I'm obviously bullish on Mahomes, but it's going to be harder than it was in 2019 to win the Super Bowl.
It's a great point. Patrick Mahomes papers over a ton of cracks for this roster and probably will for the next 12 years. So they have this advantage that nobody else has in that regard. But every one of these big money contracts they hand out to somebody is a big money contract they can't hand out to the next guy, right? And they have Travis Kelce coming up. They have Mitchell Schwartz coming up. So every one of these they dole out is one they don't have in the tank to be able to dole out to somebody else. Ultimately, I think not only does it put pressure on Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but it puts pressure on the Chiefs to draft well, because they're going to need one or two really good drafts down the pike just to give them that breathing room back of having some real contributors on cheap contracts. Otherwise, they're going to start running into some salary cap problems.
Yeah, I don't know how much it changes or moves the needle long term because of how good, and like Eric says, how singular a figure Patrick Mahomes is. But yeah, Sam is right. They're all of a sudden, those contracts that they've given out, specifically on the interior defensive line, at a position that's not as valuable as, let's say, a receiving tight end, a tackle, something like that, might pay some consequences down the line for the team. With that said, it's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. He's that good. So I don't think it moves the needle that much, but they will have some interesting decisions to make.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.